Welcome to Remember the Film, the podcast where everybody get up. It's time to slam now. This week we are talking about the 1996 classic Space Jam. And as always, I am joined by my co-hosts Hugo Panay and Josh Bradley. How are you guys doing today?
Hello, everyone.
Good, how you doing, Grizz?
Doing great.
I'm doing great. You'll notice I'm in a different environment if you're watching on YouTube. I'm visiting family in Indiana, so the whole thing is out of whack and abnormal for me.
But we're pressing forward anyway.
Yeah, gotta come out with this hot Space Jam content.
We promised the people Space Jam, and we must deliver Space Jam.
But yeah, so, we're gonna do like we always do, give a little boilerplate information on the movie, and then we'll just dive into the story of Space Jam and what it means to us and all that surrounds that.
Sweet.
So, right off the bat, Space Jam, released November 15th, 1996, directed by Joe Pytka? Do you know? I have no idea if that's right.
No idea.
And I'll tell you why I don't have any idea, because I've never heard of him outside of this.
Yep.
In fact, like looking at his IMDb, he's done like commercials and music videos is his entire list of credits. So, I mean,
which is why he directed this, as we'll learn, I think, in about 30 seconds.
About 30 seconds. Yeah, we'll just jump to that right now. The idea for this movie came from a couple of commercials that Nike had made where Bugs Bunny is playing basketball against Michael Jordan. I forget the exact names. I know one of them was Hair Jordan was the name of one of them.
Air Jordan and Aerospace Jordan.
There you go. So, marketing. And they're like, you know what's better than two commercials with Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan? An hour-and-a-half long commercial with Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan. And they were right, because it's awesome. I absolutely love it.
Yes.
The budget for this movie was $80 million, and it grossed...
It's high.
Which is a huge budget for
it's very high.
A mostly animated movie. And it grossed $230 million worldwide, which is not as high as I thought it would be. Because I felt like this movie was everywhere when I was a kid, Like, every kid I knew saw Space Jam. But apparently they all saw it for free.
Confirmation bias. Yeah.
Do you know the split between American and international? That might be why.
I'm looking at, according to Box Office Mojo, this only made $90 million domestic.
Yeah.
Which means it would have made 140 or 140 international.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not that great domestic.
Yeah. I don't know. I suppose it's the kind of movie that you also see on TV a bunch of times later on. It becomes more and more. It's got I don't know. It's kind of movie. I'm younger. I wasn't born when. Well, I was born, but I was born. I don't know, 6 months before this movie was released. And I knew about this movie when I was a kid, and I feel like it's the kind of movie that growing up you kind of watch Space Jam either on TV or your friend has VHS or DVD, and it becomes more and more relevant as the years go by. So kind of.
It looks like I didn't know this, but this looks like this came out in like the middle of November in 1996.
Yeah,
and so it was number one the week it came out, but then it quickly fell off because it started getting buried by holiday movies. That's what happened to it. Like in week 3, the Glenn Close 101 Dalmatians came out, so.
Tough to go up against that, because that did really well.
Yeah, it took over. Yeah. And Jingle All the Way, which is a movie I actually
Christmas
quite
classic.
enjoy.
Love Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, I love that movie.
But, another interesting factoid about this. We said Joe Pytka was the director, but most of the cast has later confirmed that Ivan Reitman was really the director of the movie.
Well,
right.
Ivan Reitman's a producer on the movie.
Correct.
And he's also a very successful feature film director in his own right for movies such as Ghostbusters et al. I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, and even Pytka has since said that he has complained about not having as much control over the movie as he had wanted, and so that kind of confirms that the producers, and I'm guessing Ivan Reitman, were very influential on the project.
Well, per the Wikipedia page, so I haven't dug this up myself,
right.
But apparently the two commercials that Joe Pytka had made, Warner Brothers was like kind of iffy on them because they were not sure about how much they wanted to like modernize the Looney Tunes. I guess they kind of saw them as sacred properties and didn't want them to be brought into the 90s, but like the ads were so popular, that's what convinced them to make this movie in the first place. So maybe Warner Brothers and Joe Pytka were kind of on different wavelengths from the commercials and the movie itself, and therefore they kind of trusted Ivan Reitman more, possibly. That's just that's just a theory based on what you're saying right now.
Yeah, I mean,
It's also
sounds logical.
like a moment in time where Michael Jordan is the biggest thing in the world. Like, I can see how this movie must have been made with a lot of limitations to what the actual director could do, because of Warner Bros. and the Looney Tunes, and how specific those characters are and how specific they want them to be when they are on screen. And Michael Jordan himself, who, even with, last year they released his Last Dance documentary, and it came out afterwards that he has a lot of control over anything that uses his image as well. So I can see why maybe the director didn't feel like he had as much creative freedom of control over this movie. But like, that's fine. It's the kind of movie that could not happen without that kind of control, I think. So I don't necessarily see that as a negative.
I agree. I don't think it's a negative. This was one of the first movies to film entirely in a green screened environment. It was 10 months for the live action production and 8 for the animation. If you watched The Last Dance, you saw some stuff from the recording of this, and it's really funny to look at Michael Jordan playing basketball with a bunch of like green men from Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
He played against who'd they have in the green screens? Him playing against it. I think did they have like actual like NBA players or like?
I don't think
I think I read that.
Maybe they were. I don't know that actually, but I do know that during the recording, because Michael Jordan was trying to get was trying to stay in shape, he had Warner Brothers build him a basketball court to play at during the production. Josh has found something funny. What's funny, Josh?
Per Wikipedia, Jordan filmed in a 360-degree green room with motion trackers, playing alongside green-suited NBA players and improv actors taken from the Groundlings Theater. So I'm just picturing Michael Jordan playing with actual NBA players and also a bunch of improv nerds.
Oh, I'm guarding you, Michael.
That's amazing. It's like going back to the court. It's not just that he wanted to stay in shape. That was the year, like, he retired and went to play baseball in real life. It's not just in the movie. And the movie kind of creates this alternative story of why he decided to come back. That's basically what the plot of the movie is. But
I want to talk about that later.
We'll get to it. But the reason why they built the court was because in his comeback, he came back in the middle of the year, so he hadn't worked out and had the conditioning for basketball, and the kind of training that you do for baseball, obviously very different from basketball.
Especially for the muscle groups you're working on. Yeah,
exactly. And so it after losing in the playoffs for the first time in
basically
in 4 runs, because he'd won 3 times in a row, and then he left. He lost to the Magic with Shaq and Penny, and then after that he had committed to the movie, but he also wanted to spend his whole summer, because he was a crazy, hard-working guy who would just go to the gym for 6 hours a day every day. So they had to build the court, because otherwise he would probably not have gone to do the movie, because he wanted to spend the whole summer just getting his conditioning back, because he was that.
But I just think that
crazy.
It's so cool that they did that. They built the court, and then because again he was trying to up his game back to what his expectations for himself were. He was inviting NBA players to fly down for pickup games on the Warner Brothers lot.
God, I wish I could have just worked on this production just for that.
Right? How cool would that be?
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
And also, I love that you mentioned Shaq and Penny Hardaway, because on the soundtrack for this movie, which I also want to talk about a little bit, they do Basketball Jones, and in the soundtrack version, they have Little Penny, which was, I believe, Chris Rock, who had done commercials as Little Penny Hardaway. I forget what the commercials were for, but I remember Little Penny. Was it like Sprite or something? I
That sounds right. I don't know.
I just thought it was really funny because they had Little Penny on the soundtrack for a movie just after Jordan had lost in the playoffs
to Penny. Yeah, year after they sweep them.
That's true. Yeah,
factoid for you.
Okay, so we talked about the commercials. So, guys, what is your history with this movie?
Go ahead, Hugo. I'm gonna hear yours because you were so young when it came out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the kind of movie that I was aware of as soon as I remember being aware of movies. Just because the Looney Tunes cartoons would be on TV in Italy as well. And so I remember watching those quite a lot, especially when in the summers when I came to, because I wasn't in Italy when I was very young, but in the summers we did come back and stay with my grandparents, and so I remember watching those cartoons all the time. And just kind of basketball was always a sport that I thought looked fun, even though I was only like 5 or 6 years old. So I do remember watching this movie when I was very young. And finding it really entertaining and fun. I don't know. It's kind of like, for me at the time, it was, this is a cartoon, and I wasn't even necessarily aware of who Michael Jordan was yet. But
and then you became a basketball fan.
Then I became a basketball fan after that. I suppose maybe this movie had some part in that. I don't know.
What about you, Josh?
Let's see. I was 6 when it came out. Almost 7, and this was a very important movie to me at the time, as I imagine was for you too. It seems like a very important movie for everybody, as you kind of alluded. It's funny that Hugo didn't know who Michael Jordan was. There's a good poster for this movie where it's like half of Michael Jordan's face, half of Bugs Bunny's face, and it says the top, just like this DVD box, it says, Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny, and that's I think very smart, because I think at the time, for me as a 6-year-old, Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny were about equally famous and equally important to pop culture. So yeah, I mean, I think that like my grandparents who lived in another state had this on VHS or something, and so like every time we went to go visit them, we would watch Space Jam over and over again. And up until this week, I'm not sure I'd seen it in like probably 20 years, but it brought back a lot of memories. A lot of like. We'll talk about this later, but there's a lot of humor that will go over your head when you're 6,
yeah.
like a Pulp Fiction reference, for example. But like also like as I was watching, all like the small little lines that are kind of meaningless, but like a 6-year-old will latch on to, like those came back to me as well. For example, few things were funnier than Taz saying "lemony fresh" after he cleaned the basketball court. Yeah, so
I mean
what about you, Grizz?
For me, it's the same sort of deal. Like every time I watch it, and I did rewatch this fairly recently, like 6 months ago, something like that. And every time I rewatch it, I am reminded, like, oh, that's where I got that quote. Like I say stuff from this movie all the time, and I completely forget. Like I always do the sure, right.
That's a great one. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah,
and
I agree.
I've been saying it for decades. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, that's right. I got that from Space Jam. Or the did you order the original recipe or the extra crispy?
Extra crispy. Also, I don't really say this anymore, but I think that maybe the first time that I laughed until I almost peed myself was when Daffy Duck says, "I don't want to go to school today. I want to stay home and bake cookies with you." Yeah. Incredible. Iconic.
So
untouchable.
This is like a very nostalgia-fueled movie for me. And of course, because it was, so important to me as a kid, because Michael Jordan was everything. And Bugs Bunny was, you had all the cartoons that were being made in the 90s, but then you also had the Looney Tunes that played right alongside those. So Looney Tunes has always been something that it's hard for me to place what time those cartoons were actually made, because they made them, decades before, and they just continued to play them well through the 90s into the 2000s. And so, like, I know they weren't made in the 90s, but I have no clue when they were actually made.
Probably like the 50s?
I want to say 50s, maybe 60s.
I don't really know. Depends on the cartoon. Like some of the Looney Tunes you can tell like are older, and then I think they kind of modernized them a little bit and made.
They kind of made a comeback after the movie, because I know there's modern versions of them.
They've made several comebacks where they've made new versions of the Looney Tunes, and I've watched some of those, and I don't like. It's weird. It's the sort of thing that it almost feels impossible to properly modernize, because a lot of what they did in cartoons back then were made just like this movie was, with a lot of jokes for adults and some slapstick humor for kids, right? But when they've redone these versions of Looney Tunes, it's almost like they can't decide which market they're trying to hit. Because so they either go too far into making it like it's like a sitcom and the kids don't think it's funny, so the show gets canceled. Or they go way slapstick with it and adults don't want to watch it and the show gets canceled. So but yeah, so
yeah, it's kind of a product. It's kind of a product of its time, and I feel like it's good that it stays there and it stays what it is. And it's kind of interesting that this movie was made in the 90s. Even it's sort of a weird time for this property specifically to be associated with Michael Jordan, right?
Well, it's funny you say that. So I'm gonna frequent listener and past and future guest TJ emailed me a stream of consciousness take on Space Jam that I just alluded to you guys when we were talking off mic. And one of the smartest things I think he said in that stream of consciousness email is that he kind of, the guys on Moron Mountain want to, get new attractions. And he kind of sees this as like a parallel of like Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes trying to get new attractions to make Looney Tunes relevant again in the 90s. So like basically getting Michael Jordan into a movie with Bugs Bunny is a way to get new attractions for Looney Tunes. And like 6 years earlier, Warner Brothers bought Six Flags because it's a theme park that, Hugo, you're probably not familiar with, but Grizz, I'm sure you are familiar with because you're from Texas.
Yes.
So like there's a Six Flags in St. Louis that I grew up going to every year and I loved going to every time. There's a Six Flags out here in LA that I have not yet been to, but like seeing Bugs Bunny and stuff at Six Flags was like a big deal for me. And that was like part of what made Six Flags so great. And like I think that like that the Looney Tunes being part of a theme park in real life and then also like making this movie about them not wanting to go to a theme park is I think interesting, but also like, them being part of Six Flags is also part of modernizing them and bringing them into the 90s and introducing them to a new generation, which is also like what the Moron Mountain people are trying to do in this movie and that kind of stuff. And also like you mentioned like how hard it would be to modernize Looney Tunes. Well, if you went to Six Flags in the 90s, you saw like the apparel they would sell would have like Bugs Bunny in like baggy pants and a backwards hat and like 90s attire, and like Tweety Bird being like a tough guy, and Taz
Tweety Bird with
used
sunglasses
a lot.
and a beanie and like Jinko jeans.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, and you're worried about Space Jam modernizing the Looney Tunes when you already have this going on at Six Flags?
No, I'm more so talking about the cartoons themselves, because like the dynamic of the cartoons is so specific and simple. Like Wile E. Coyote chases the beep beep thing and
beep,
never
beep
catches
thing.
it, and he tries to blow it up, and then he blows himself up, and then he falls down from a cliff. That's you can't. That's the cartoon. How do you make it into something different?
Yeah,
those are the characters. That's what I'm saying. But of course, you can use the image
for those
to do branding and stuff.
For some Looney Tunes characters, it is like that, where even if they remade it today, it would be the exact same storylines because there's really nothing more you can do than do more of the same. But Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Daffy Duck, a lot of their cartoons were tied to culturally relevant things at the time, or tied to things that everybody knows about, like big operas and things like that. They did a lot of cartoons based around that, making fun of those sort of things. So those are the ones that they always try to modernize and like put them in modern life situations because that's how those characters were used. So ironically, the biggest names, Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny, are probably the ones that they struggle the most with to make into more relevant characters today. Meanwhile, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote are off to their same old antics every time. No big deal.
Like that. I feel like that's so universal that Wile E. Coyote will never not be funny for any generation, because it's just like it's such a simple premise, but it's so good. And
there's 1,000 different ways you can knock Wile E. Coyote off a cliff.
Exactly. It's great.
So the reason we're talking about this movie right now is because Space Jam: A New Legacy is coming out in the coming weeks. So that's what prompted us to want to talk about this again. What are y'all's expectations and what are your feelings about the new Space Jam movie? I'll start with Josh on this one.
Well, so I just watched the trailer for the first time about, 20 minutes ago before we started recording. So I haven't had much time to let that sink in. But I think just like watching this, when I heard it was announced, I was like, okay, finally, because I feel like they've been like talking about a sequel to Space Jam for what feels like 10 years. I don't know if that's really true, but like it feels like it's a long time coming.
No,
so
it's
like
easily been that long. It's basically been LeBron's entire career. They've been talking about him being in a new Space Jam.
Yes. So, and I've always been very pro Space Jam sequel because I'm very pro Space Jam. To those not watching the video, Hugo just replaced his Michael Jordan Funko Pop with the LeBron James Funko Pop. So that's what you're missing out on by not watching the video.
It's also like he's literally like it's actually the Toon Squad,
Toon Squad
jersey.
Toon
Look
Squad
at that.
video.
It's wearing number 6. Amazing. This is
Fantastic.
Great. Sorry.
But so like I've always like been looking forward to a Space Jam 2, but like now that I watched Space Jam again this week, I'm worried that there are things in Space Jam that make it work that are not replicatable for the sequel. And I can talk about those a little bit in a little while, but also like I watched the trailer for the new one. Looks pretty good. So, I'm rooting for it. I hope it's good. I like when movies are good. So what about you guys?
Hugo?
I feel like okay. I think when thinking about a movie like Space Jam and like the sequel to Space Jam, you have to kind of divorce yourself from the nostalgia that you might feel for the original, and because like if you judge it from a very distant point of view, it's kind of it's like not a super great movie like that has so many super amazing ideas. Like it's a fun little idea and it works because it's a fun contrast to put these characters together. And I feel like the next movie is kind of redoing that and modernizing it a little bit. It's bringing it into, 2020, 2021. It's getting another iconic, NBA player with LeBron to do it at a similar point in his career as well. Because, Michael would go back to play and he would be able to be very successful he would have a second three-peat, but he was still, 30-something years old. So he was also already a very established figure in the NBA, and LeBron is kind of doing the same. And the way they're doing it does seem like fun to me. LeBron himself, to me at least, because I've seen him in other things, he's done some more. He's a bit more of a public speaker, public figure in a way that players in the 90s weren't. So I know that he's, I think, a little bit of a better actor because
certainly
you
more
can tell
experience.
Jordan a lot of. Yeah, you can tell Jordan a lot of the time they were kind of feeding him the lines and he's just kind of saying it, which is fine. Like, I don't expect him to be a good actor, but you can tell. So I feel like they'll do a bit more of a story with this one, and they're also kind of delving into the WB portfolio of IPs. Like, I don't know if you've seen that clip, but they redid a scene from The Matrix, so there's going to be... I think the movie, it will be about LeBron going into different WB worlds. So it'll maintain that theme park kind of thing that way, and it
does have a Ready Player One kind of feel to it.
It does have a Ready Player One.
And maybe it's just because the Iron Giant is so prevalent in the trailer, and Iron Giant was so prevalent in the Ready Player One that I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, I didn't notice this watching the trailer myself, but I do know when the trailer dropped like a month or two ago that people pointed out that the Droogs from A Clockwork Orange appear in the trailer.
Yeah, it's so weird.
I don't know how that's going to work out. Yeah,
I don't know. I just think they're just going to use iconic imagery from a lot of different properties that WB owns, and it'll be kind of fun in that way, in the same way that kind of Ready Player One is. Like, the thing with Ready Player One is that it skews a little more adult with what it's trying to do story-wise, so it fails at that. But this movie is very much a movie for kids. It's a kind of a fun little movie for kids, while also having all those pop culture references that will be fun for adults to notice. Like that clip from where they redid the first scene from The Matrix with Trinity, and Granny is Trinity doing the jump and the bullet time thing. I was like, I need to see this day one. This is great. I need this.
If they even mention The Matrix in any trailer, it's
I'm
at
in.
the top of Hugo's list.
But it's like you can do it in a really bad, poor way, where you kind of just do the famous scene with them leaning back. But
a lot of things did it in a bad, poor way.
Exactly. But the way that they redid it is so clever that it makes me think that the people behind this know what they're working with, and they are going to have fun with it. So it's not going to be a super great movie, but it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Also, I like LeBron as a person, so it's fun.
The fastest way to Hugo's heart is through The Matrix.
Yes absolutely. Like, it's got The Matrix and it's got LeBron James, so I'm in. Although, like, I will say, the 3D CGI Looney Tunes look weird.
That's
not
my
a fan.
biggest issue with this so far, is that I wish they would have stuck with more traditional look for the Looney Tunes characters, just because I think we're approaching Uncanny Valley territory with these.
Yeah, it's just I don't know.
I don't know. I like the animation of the original Space Jam, the one we're talking about today, holds up pretty well for the cartoon characters. I will say the visual effects of turning Michael Jordan into a basketball and the character Stan being flattened into a pancake and reinflated, those did not hold up. Those are terrible. But I don't mind because it's Space Jam, it's like whatever. But, I think that they should have stuck with the more traditional animation. I'm looking forward to it. I like LeBron James. He is definitely going to be a more experienced actor, and therefore hopefully will be marginally better than MJ was.
He's rough at times in this movie. It's rough.
So yeah, I think I'm excited for it. The big question I have though is, can the soundtrack for the new Space Jam possibly compete with the soundtrack for the original Space Jam?
No, absolutely not.
There's no way, right?
No way.
No. Because they don't do soundtracks like this anymore. They're way more generic in modern big blockbuster movies, right?
Who's the seal of 2021? Do we have a seal in 2021?
Who's today's seal?
I actually just saw Seal a couple years ago at the Hollywood Bowl. He still got it, man.
I mean, yeah, his voice is incredible.
I guess Seal is the seal of 2021.
And then there's I Believe I Can Fly, which was performed by no one.
That's crazy. It's crazy that no one sang that.
No one sang it, but
what a great song that no one sang.
This is the running thing whenever, in case you're new to the show, whenever the director or singer or anyone involved has gone on in later times to become a social pariah for very justified reasons.
Or was it the time we didn't know about it?
We didn't know about it?
Yeah.
They no longer get to be affiliated with the thing we like. But yeah, so I absolutely love this soundtrack. I wanted the soundtrack so bad that I went to the store with my mom to buy the CD. And the CD was sold out, but they had it on cassette. So I bought the Space Jam soundtrack on cassette.
That's an artifact, man. I hope you still have that somewhere.
I don't. My cousin accidentally ruined it with his cassette player.
Oh no!
Get the pencil out. Get the pencil out.
I mean, it was shredded. It was absolutely destroyed.
Oh, okay.
But it was okay because then they bought me the CD.
Nice. Upgrade.
Yeah, I absolutely love the soundtrack, and I still several songs from the soundtrack are still on my top-rated playlist.
If your cousin wants, your cousin can ruin my DVD so they can buy me the Blu-ray.
Buy me the Blu-ray. I'll let him know.
Gotta have it in 4K,
So with regards to the soundtrack, like I said, I absolutely love the soundtrack. If you had to pick, which one do you like better, the music from Space Jam or the actual movie Space Jam?
I mean, the music is included in the movie, so
that's fair.
I'm going to say the movie.
So then the movie. I mean,
yes.
That's a good point.
Plus, I feel like if I were to listen to the music, it would just make me want to watch the movie. Yeah. I feel like so.
The last thing I want to talk about before we get into the plot is about. Actually, two things I want to do before we get into the plot. One thing I want to talk about is voice actors. We already talked about it, how in all of the advertisements for this movie, it's Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny. Or they had, Daffy Duck. Like, they were advertised as the characters themselves in the billing rather than the actual voice actors. Which
they're doing for the second movie as well.
They're doing that again. And I understand that from a marketing perspective, for sure. Because you're trying to appeal to the kids. The kids don't care that freaking Billy West was voicing Bugs Bunny in in Space Jam. But I thought it was so interesting. Originally, all of the voices for the male characters, the male Looney Tunes characters, were going to be voiced by Noel Blanc, which was Mel Blanc's son. Mel Blanc, famously the voice of all these characters originally, and they couldn't agree on a contract, so then they ended up hiring 5 actors to come in and play all the roles that were originally going to be played by one guy. And at the time, some of these were already fairly prolific voice actors, but most of them have gone on to be like the most prolific voice actors in animation. We're talking Billy West, who of course did Doug and Ren and Stimpy, and he's Fry in Futurama. D. Bradley Baker, who's been in every Star Wars show. He's all the clones. He's all the clones.
He's shooting the clankers. He's shooting the clankers.
He's also
Love that guy.
He's also Klaus in American Dad. Then you have Bob Bergen, who voiced Luke Skywalker in dozens of Star Wars video games. He's the squirrel from Emperor's New Groove, and he was Lupin the Third, which is a very famous anime. He played Arsène Lupin in that. And then Bill Farmer, who was the voice of Goofy and Pluto, and still is. Like, it's still, he's been voicing these guys for 30 years. And then they even brought in Kath Soucie to play Lola Bunny, and that is, of course, Phil and Lil from Rugrats, as well as Q*bert Farnsworth in Futurama, and Kanga from Winnie the Pooh. So I'm just saying, as a big animation guy, like I loved the movie as a kid, but as I've gotten older, I appreciate the quality of the voice acting in this, because imagine stepping into the shoes of an absolute legend in Mel Blanc. How crazy is that? And then to go on and they end up being as good and as prolific as he ever was.
I had no idea that like the voice of Fry is also the voice of Bugs Bunny in this. That's crazy.
Billy West is insane.
That's really crazy. Yeah. Damn, dude.
But and then of course they also had Danny DeVito as Swackhammer, and
Yes.
Oh yeah.
he even looks like Danny DeVito, a much taller Danny DeVito, but
I'm sure that's by design. I'm sure they intentionally did that.
But
I read that they originally wanted not Dan DeVito, but it was like supposed to be like Jack Palance or something like that.
yeah, I
Is
think that
that
was right. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad they got Dan DeVito.
Me too.
Mostly because I don't think I knew who Jack Palance was in 1996, but I knew who Dan DeVito was because of Matilda.
I thought you were
Great
going to say Batman Returns.
That also, but yeah, Batman Returns, Matilda, combo of the two, and also Twins, the movie Twins, which is a good one.
The reason I wanted to talk about these great voice actors is because, as I said, they are absolute legends, super prolific voice actors. For the sequel, only one of them is returning to play any characters in the new Space Jam, and that's Bob Bergen, and he's not even coming back for Porky Pig, who he played for over 25 years. He's coming back. He's doing Tweety Bird, who he also played forever. But I just,
Could it be that they hired whoever the voice actors are for the modern Looney Tunes cartoons?
I'm sure that's a possibility.
And maybe they just didn't, like, because maybe these people went on to work on other stuff, but they got other people to do the cartoons, and then at this point, they're just, somebody is the voice of Bugs Bunny, that's somebody that we don't know.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible.
Now,
and maybe these people who are voicing it in the new ones are going to go on to become voice acting legends, just like these people did. But it seemed odd to me that, especially since this new Space Jam, while it is going to appeal to new basketball fans, new fans of Looney Tunes, it is also for people like us who watched the original Space Jam as kids. And so I'm a little surprised that they didn't bring back more of the original cast.
I also wonder if the movie is going to engage with being a sequel at all. Like, I don't know, are they going to acknowledge the first one? Are they going to talk about, like, because obviously LeBron and Michael are two people who are often associated with in sports debates. Who's the greatest of all time? Is it LeBron? Is it Michael?
It's Michael.
Some people say one or the other. It's Michael, but some people say LeBron, some people say Michael. It's like, are they going to acknowledge that, the fact that they're two gigantic stars in their sport and they're doing the same movie and the same thing is happening twice? I'm not sure. Like, or are they just gonna do a movie and it's LeBron, but they don't really talk about the old one. I'm curious about that.
And it's definitely not clear from the trailer. In fact, the trailer doesn't even make it clear how many other basketball players are going to be in this one.
Right, yeah.
A lot, according to the Wikipedia page.
Yeah, there's a lot, like, when I looked into it, but you don't get that from the trailer, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I feel like they're not giving a lot away from the movie in the trailers, which is something that I think that's good. I think it's going to be surprising, yeah. So also, apparently, Zendaya is playing Lola Bunny.
Yes. I'm fine with that.
But also,
a lot of people are grumpy about that, but I'm okay with it.
Jeff Bergman is playing Bugs in and Sylvester and Foghorn Leghorn. Apparently Jeff Bergman is one of the people who replaced Mel Blanc when Mel Blanc died as the voice of Bugs Bunny. And also Eric Bauza is doing the voice of Daffy, Porky, and Marvin the Martian. And apparently Eric Bauza has also kind of been doing Bugs Bunny and a bunch of other Looney Tunes characters off and on for the last 20 years. So they do have like the current people, doing the main characters. But then they also have some stunt casting with Zendaya as Lola and Gabriel Iglesias as Speedy Gonzalez, for example.
So the last thing that I wanted to talk about before we go into the plot here is I just wanted to ask for fun, if you were to pick a sport that you wanted to make a Space Jam-esque movie out of, which sport would it be? Who would be your Michael Jordan? Who would be the other athletes who are going to have their abilities stolen? Let's start with Hugo.
Okay, so since I don't really like, my favorite sport is basketball. So my first thought was, they should do it with LeBron James. So I was like, they're doing that. Never mind. So I thought a good sport to do kind of a Space Jam-like movie could be tennis. Because Roger Federer, another guy who I would consider the greatest of all time at tennis, is in the last maybe year or few years of his career. And I feel like he speaks great English, so he could work in an American movie. He is a really fun person and a personality, and everybody in the world of tennis knows him. And I feel like you could build this movie where he has to go through a tournament and he has to play against the Monstars, which in this hypothetical story would have stolen all of the talent from his rivals that he met throughout his career. So it could be, he could go through Pete Sampras, he could go through Andy Roddick. Then he go to Nadal, Murray, Djokovic, all the best players that he had to face over 20 years of his career. And I feel like that could be a fun movie. And if you wanted to implement the Looney Tunes as well, he could just be playing doubles with them.
Yeah, of course.
So in each match he plays with a different Looney Tune, and the Looney Tunes could have their crazy antics in the tennis court, which I feel like could work quite well for the visual comedy that they do.
I completely agree. That's a great idea. And I think that it also has an international flair to it, because there's so many great tennis players from all over the world.
I can already picture Tweety Bird's the ball boy, and then antics ensuing because they use Tweety Bird as the ball.
Yes,
yeah,
perfect.
It's just,
you could see it.
It's writing itself.
It is writing itself.
Or a scene where somebody, they're being really good at throwing the ball at they're shooting really good shots, but Roadrunner's just running back and forth and getting all the balls because he's too fast and they cannot get past him. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff they could do.
Yeah, they could. This could work. Let's call someone. Let's get someone on this.
Let's pitch it. Hey, Raj, would you like to do this movie?
Hey, Raj. What about you, Josh? What's your sport of choice?
I gotta do baseball, obviously. And I just did this entirely off the top of my head, and most of my players will be from the '90s because the late '90s, because that's when I was most into baseball. Even though I still love baseball, but even though it is tempting to pick a Cardinals player as the Michael Jordan-esque figure, if I'm doing the late '90s, there's only one choice for the Michael Jordan figure, and that's Ken Griffey Jr.
Perfect.
Who was the Michael Jordan of baseball. Not only did he help modernize the game with his really, really cool backwards hat in the home run derbies and batting practice, but he also had the prettiest swing I've ever seen in my life. So, Ken Griffey Jr. would be the Michael Jordan figure, and this was fun. The Monstar team he'd be playing against, pitching, Randy Johnson, catching, Pudge Rodriguez, first base, Frank Thomas, second base, Craig Biggio, shortstop, Derek Jeter, third base, Cal Ripken Jr., and your outfield would be Larry Walker, Tony Gwynn, and Jose Canseco. Just
I'm loving this.
Amazing.
Oh, man.
I want to see that movie right now. Show me that movie.
I appreciate you including Craig Biggio in the first place, but
yeah, man. Yeah.
I mean, the Frank Thomas is perfect. He's already called the Big Hurt. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, picture cartoon monsterized versions of people like Randy Johnson and Frank Thomas and Jose Canseco.
Yeah.
You're already halfway there, So, yes, I want to see that movie real bad.
I think that would be perfect. What would you call it? Space Grand Slam?
I mean, that could be after the title of both of our movies, my movie and Hugo's movie.
Both
yeah.
Well, so
what about you, Grizz?
I chose football, American football,
of course.
Fake football.
The NFL, and so when you think about American football, there is one person above all else who is perfect for acting in a movie, and it's obviously Peyton Manning. Now, Peyton Manning is no longer playing professional football, but I think that'll work. The Looney Tunes, they go to get Peyton Manning, and he's like, guys, I'm not playing anymore, but I'll help you put the team together. And then they go, the other people who get stolen. I guess I'm backwards here. Peyton Manning is gonna help coach them, I guess, because the other players who are getting stolen. We're getting Pat Mahomes, who is the biggest quarterback right now. J.J. Watt, who, if you've seen him on Saturday Night Live, got some comedic chops. So when they're showing him without his abilities, I imagine we can get some pretty good antics of J.J. Watt stumbling around. Rob Gronkowski, who is perfect for it because, again, he's got that big Hollywood personality. And then I've got Zach Martin, who I had to pick because he went to Notre Dame. And you need at least one big lineman for them to steal the abilities from. And then I went with Derrick Henry, who's two-time league-leading rusher.
Very nice.
And Stephon Diggs, because we got to have a big, high-profile wide receiver for them to take as well. I don't know what I would call it, though, because there's no good, AM word that works with Space Jam,
Space gridiron.
Space gridiron.
It's a we'll workshop it.
that one.
That's a first draft idea.
That's what they'll call it while they're recording it, so that people don't show up on set,
There you go.
because they won't know what's happening there. All right, well, so that was my for fun thing there. I appreciate you guys humoring me with that. So let's get into the plot. I'm just going to kind of burn through it because this is, after all, a cartoon movie about Michael Jordan playing basketball with Bugs Bunny. We don't need to dwell too much on the actual plot. But if there's something you want to touch on, just say, "Hey, Grizz." And we'll focus on that for a little bit. So we open up with young Michael Jordan shooting hoops in the middle of the night, and his dad comes outside and tells him it's bedtime and gives him the old, okay, one more shot. But then, of course, young Michael Jordan's a god among men and, drains a shot.
Don't miss.
Yeah, and he says, okay, go ahead, shoot till you miss, which I think is very, very touching because then in between each shot, young Michael is laying out his life goals. And, I really wonder how much Michael Jordan had planned out his entire life as a child, because I could almost believe him actually doing that.
Yeah.
But
one thing, when I watched this week, I had absolutely zero memory of this scene. When I turned it on, I'm like, what is this? I mean, I know it's Space Jam because I Believe I Can Fly is playing over it, but I guess as a kid, I must have fast forwarded to this part because I don't remember this part.
Get to Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
It's a really good scene.
It is. It's very touching, especially when, I'm sure Hugo knows, and anyone who watched The Last Dance knows, Michael Jordan's dad had just died very recently, prior to
a year and a half, 2 years before this. Yeah.
So
in a tragic way as well, he was killed.
He was killed.
So.
Murdered. Yeah.
And so and Michael Jordan famously had a fantastic relationship with his father. Which, so I'm actually really glad that they included this in this movie because, especially as an adult, it's something that I appreciate even more about this movie. But I did think, it was a little cheesy that, after he's like, oh, you're going to do all these great things. And let me guess, next you're going to fly? What? Why? Well, that's not a thing. That's not a thing people say. Why would you say that, Dad?
But he believes he can fly. He believes he can touch the sky.
He thinks about it every night and day. But then young Michael runs up to the hoop and he's going to dunk, but he's definitely not. There's no way that kid was going to dunk. So, but then we cut into a montage of actual Michael Jordan highlights. And man, is this the best way to do opening credits for this movie.
Yes. 100%.
And
it's so good.
On top of,
and you see the big Bugs Bunny while Michael Jordan highlights are playing, and it just puts you in the mood. It's great.
Well, and in addition to all the highlights putting you and the motion graphics putting you in the mood, the greatest movie theme song of all time is playing in the background.
Yep,
with
absolutely.
Quad City DJs.
Evoked in our opening.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
But so after those. After that highlight reel, as the credit sequence, it immediately cuts to Michael Jordan retiring, announcing he's going to play baseball. And I think it's actually super, super smart to begin the movie both with this montage of highlights and then him retiring from basketball, because it, like you just said, watching Michael Jordan highlights, particularly with that like upbeat soundtrack, is really, really fun, and you want to see more Michael Jordan highlights. And so like when you see those and then he immediately quits, that's how it
felt in real life.
Yeah, and there's like a big disconnect there. And so like when he like finally suits up again and starts playing again, that's like an enormous catharsis. And basically the movie's setting you up for that catharsis by like teasing you with these Michael Jordan basketball stuff and then taking that away immediately in the first scene and then eventually giving it back to you like halfway through the movie. And I think that's actually like really, really smart. That's something I was probably responding to as a kid without really like being able to put into words what I was responding to. But like, you know, when he like comes back and like it starts from the ground up with his feet and his sneakers and like kind of pans up his body into his basketball attire and he says, let's see if I remember how to do this. And then it's another montage of him like dunking over
repeatedly.
Seal singing Steve Miller Band. And like, I remember as a kid thinking that scene was so awesome. And the reason it's so awesome is because it teases you with Michael Jordan basketball, takes it away from you, and then delivers the cathartic moment later on, which I think is really smart.
It really knows how to deal with how iconic a figure he is in the movie. Like the 100%. First part, it deals with all the non-iconic things about Michael, where he's like, oh, he went to play baseball and he was fine for a basketball player, but he wasn't that good. And you know, he plays golf with his friends and he has a family. And then once he goes into the Toons world, he becomes that legend again, and he does stuff that's even more impossible than the stuff that he did in real life.
I didn't think about it much as a child, but whenever I rewatch this press conference part, the more frustrated I am with the writing in this, where like Michael Jordan's like, they say, so what are you going to do now, Michael? And he's like, well, I think I'm going to go be a professional baseball player. And no one's like, really? They're just like, of course you are, Michael. What position are you going to play?
The retirement thing, I'm not entirely sure that they didn't take real footage in the retirement scene. Because I remember, I have seen the video of his announcement where he said he was going to retire, and that is exactly what he said and how he said it. It's the same setting as well. So I'm not 100% sure whether they recreated it or whether they used parts of the real press conference and kind of intercut it with stuff for the movie.
If they did take, or even if it was just like they interspersed like the same quotes and things from it, it has to be something like the reporters. Like, I mean, Michael Jordan must have been just such a godlike figure to these reporters that they're like, of course, you can do anything, Michael. I believe that you will be a great baseball player. They didn't even question that. Even as a kid, when I heard Michael Jordan was going to go play baseball, I'm like, really?
I remember that too.
It's like, Michael,
I was a real little kid when that happened.
You know that's hard, right? Like, going to play another sport, that's difficult, right? And of course, Michael does go to play baseball. But before we see that, we see Moron Mountain, where we meet Swackhammer and his minions, who are apparently called Nerdlucks, despite that never being mentioned anywhere in the movie.
No. Yeah.
But Swackhammer and the Nerdlucks are talking about how they need new attractions for their theme park, so they are going to kidnap the Looney Tunes. Of course they are. That makes sense. And
Moron Mountain is Six Flags, I guess,
Flags.
because they needed Looney Tunes.
And with that extra context that Josh provided earlier, I'm like, did they... Like, I wonder how aware they were of this whole situation. Like, did the left hand know what the right hand was doing?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
Did everyone working on this movie know that they were getting involved with Six Flags? I don't remember the timeline exactly.
Well, I think Warner Brothers bought Six Flags in the early 90s, so before this movie. And I think the Looney Tunes were involved in Six Flags in the 80s, and that's why Warner Brothers bought Six Flags, I think. I don't really know the timeline either, but
yeah, so
it's before this movie came out for sure.
So I'm just wondering, like, you know, were they poking fun at themselves, or was it just kind of like, this is the plot we came up with, and it's weird that it kind of parallels reality pretty significantly. But they go,
I don't know, man.
They go to they're going to go get the Looney Tunes. But now we're going to cut back to Michael Jordan playing baseball, and guess what, guys? He's bad at baseball.
Baseball's hard.
Baseball's difficult, and it turns out being really good at one sport does not guarantee your ability to be really good at another sport. Shocking, to say the least.
For the record, though, the fact that he could be like the greatest athlete in one sport and then like still be like minor league worthy in another sport, that's pretty remarkable.
Okay.
Like people made a lot of jokes at how bad he was at baseball, but like he was really, really good at baseball.
Yes,
still.
Obviously way better than the majority of people. But in terms of like he wasn't even a good minor league player.
No.
Like if you're batting, as they say in the movie, batting .214 in the minors, you don't have a shot at the big leagues.
I mean, he was in Double-A though. He probably would have been pretty good at Single-A, I imagine. But but he probably got to Double-A because he was Michael Jordan. I think they covered that in the in the Last Dance. I think they covered that. Yeah.
But so he's not very good, but the good news is he autographed a basketball for the rival catcher, and I actually love this scene a lot because the catcher starts giving him like tips, like, "Hey, the next pitch is going to be a curveball, outside corner, don't swing." And then MJ's listening to him until he just decides not to listen to him anymore, and he strikes out. But yeah, so I love that scene because it is really funny that the idea of a rival opponent giving you tips just because you signed a basketball because you're Michael Jordan, and then he's just so friendly afterwards. Great talking to you.
Hey.
And then the guys in the dugout, that was a great strikeout, Mike. That was a great strikeout.
Good looking strikeout, Mike. When I strike out, it's ugly.
when other people strike out, it looks bad, but that was a good looking strikeout.
Yeah.
So it's during this time we're introduced to Wayne Knight's character, the bumbling fat guy Stan. As a fat guy myself, I'm not overly wild about this characterization, but
a lot of fat jokes.
A lot of fat jokes in this movie.
I mean, 90s comedies, I think, and early 2000s comedies were definitely more mean than comedies nowadays. But like this movie's pretty mean. Yeah.
And Stan is a humorous character. I mean, Wayne Knight he has two characters. He either plays Newman in Seinfeld, or he plays the character he's playing here in Stan, which is sort of a frantic, like, oh my god, I'm screwing everything up all the time kind of guy.
Yeah. Like, this is basically just Dennis Nedry from Jurassic Park.
I was going to ask, is Dennis Nedry Stan or is Dennis Nedry Newman?
He's a Stan.
Bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, because he does screw up an awful lot in Jurassic Park. But yeah, so we meet Stan, and he's the publicist for the Barons. And while they're having this conversation, a rocket ship shoots past the stadium, and everyone looks up at it and then immediately goes back to baseball. Like, that's a very normal thing. And given the way people react to shocking news in the United States today, I don't know if it's that far from the truth, honestly.
Maybe not.
But the rocket...
Oh, is that an alien rocket ship? Cool.
All
right.
Michael Jordan's playing baseball.
Let's go. Fourth inning. Let's go.
But yeah, the rocket ship crashes into the floor, into the ground in front of the Piggly Wiggly. And it's going to the center of the earth because that's where the Looney Tunes live, apparently.
Yeah, down a hole.
And they get in there, and I guess we cut back to MJ back at home after having a mediocre game, and his son's getting home from his game, and his son's all sad because he only went 4 for 5 or whatever it was. And apparently his son's really, really good at baseball. And they're watching TV, and this is when Porky Pig runs in and interrupts the cartoon and says, "Hey, hang on, emergency cartoon meeting," which...
They say emergency union meeting. Emergency union meeting. Is great.
That's right. And as an adult, I'm like, none of the kids are, they're not going to tell their dad what they just saw on TV. Like, they say, where'd they go? But, they don't talk to any adults about it, But yeah, so then we're moving on to the union meeting. They've announced to the Looney Tunes they're going to enslave them, which a lot of slavery talk in Space Jam, a lot more than I remember.
A lot of slavery talk, yeah.
But Bugs, being the trickster that he is, tells them that they have to give him a chance to win their freedom back. And so
it's written in the book.
It's in the rule book, and he writes it down on a page and sticks it inside a book. And they, of course, believe him. So they give them the chance. And so they decide, because the aliens are so small, they're going to play basketball. Because these tiny little aliens, there's nothing they can do about it. But the aliens are also tricksters. So they head up to the surface and start stealing the talent of NBA players. And what do you think? What do you think about this scene here, guys? With Charles Barkley getting his talent stolen.
I don't know. I don't exactly know how they filmed it because it looks like a real game.
It 100% had to be a real game. It had to be.
Like there had to be at least like the beginning where he's just playing against another NBA team. Like I think they took footage from real NBA games, or like they agreed with the NBA, oh, we can come with our cameras and film a few shots just to insert in the movie or something like that. Because like it looks so real. And then of course
it's
the parts
real
where
players
he,
too.
you know,
like they have the the actual Suns
players.
team. You know.
Yeah.
It's so funny because Charles Barkley at this time, Charles has always had a bit of a reputation. He got into a lot of trouble off court, that sort of thing. But now he's, one of the hosts of Inside the NBA and is a funny guy and is well beloved. And I
Capital One commercials.
Yeah, he's everywhere. And honestly, he's like other than Michael Jordan's reputation, I think Charles Barkley is the bigger star these days, just because of how much more prevalent he is in modern stuff. But I just think it's really funny to see, like, looking back, like how he's transitioned into an actual, like, almost an actor.
It's fun that it's Barkley as well because of the rivalry that him and Michael have, and there's many videos online of them just making fun of each other because Michael always makes fun of him for never having won a championship, and because they played golf and Barkley apparently is really bad at golf, and so it's kind of funny if you know that kind of the background that they chose him.
That was a joke I was going to make, was that the Nerdlux also stole his ability to golf, and they just never gave that back.
Yeah, that's true. It is funny. Like, I suppose they had to find players who would agree to do this, because they didn't necessarily pick the 5 best players outside of Michael. Barkley was up there, but like the others, like even
Patrick Ewing was a big deal.
Patrick Ewing was a big deal, but he was kind of also at the tail end of his best years. Like they didn't necessarily pick the 5 best players that were around.
I did appreciate,
but I'm sure they would have to agree on it.
I did appreciate them choosing Muggsy Bogues, because they, he was one of the shortest players at the time, but also well known for his ball handling skills. So like he had some unique abilities that made sense. But the choices of Larry Johnson and Sean Bradley baffle me to this day.
Well, I'm just assuming they were trying to get like a variety of like shapes they could make for their opposing players. Like Sean Bradley and Muggsy Bogues is like an obvious choice because one's super tall, one's super short, and you could like have some variety in like your character design. And also, apparently, according to the Wikipedia page, instead of Sean Bradley, they originally wanted George Murasan, who was the tallest player to ever play in the NBA at 7'7", but they couldn't get him, so they got Sean Bradley instead. Just an enormous
one of
white
the
dude.
tallest players.
And I guess it would make sense that like the best players in the NBA don't want to be in a movie where they're overshadowed by Michael Jordan, like where they just kind of like, except for Barkley because they were friends, but
well, they also like have to be the butt of jokes. Like there's a 5-minute segment in this where it's a montage of like how useless they are as people without their basketball abilities. That's kind of
Patrick Ewing's therapist accuses him of being impotent.
Yeah. Oh my god, I was blown away by that joke. I was like, oh, okay, you're doing this.
It's obviously a Freud joke because the psychiatrist is very clearly modeled after Sigmund Freud.
For sure.
So I think they're poking fun at Freud more than they're poking fun at Patrick Ewing.
Yeah. But like, it's still like a kids' movie doing that joke. I didn't expect.
But that whole montage with them having lost their powers and like talking to the doctors and everything, there's a lot of really good humor in that. I love Charles Barkley at the church praying to get, and he's, I'll never date Madonna again.
Yeah, I'll
never get a
that
technical again.
Yeah.
I'll never get ejected.
So I absolutely love that. But so they steal the abilities and they go back down to Looney Tunes. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Real quick, when the scene they steal the abilities, who's in the audience but Patricia Heaton from
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Everybody Loves Raymond, and who's she sitting with? Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer Simpson, et al. That's pretty cool. 90s powerhouses.
And I don't even know, were they already big stars at that point?
I mean, The Simpsons had been on the air for at least 7 or 8 years.
Sure, but like
you
didn't know what Homer Simpson's voice actor looked like, right? I mean,
I don't know.
But in any case, it was one of those moments. I'm like, wait, I know both of these people. What are they doing here? But the Looney Tunes are practicing, and then the Nerdlux show up, and they're like, okay, it's our turn to use the court. and then they, use the ball and become the Monstars. Josh, you're a big fan of this moment.
I love this scene, especially like how the sky just turns black behind them, and then the transformation, and they're scary looking, man, and like it's just such a great like oh shit moment, like we thought we had this figured out, and now what the hell do we do now kind of thing. It's good stuff.
And I love that they become giant monsters, and then they dunk once and then
just leave. Yeah.
Like, okay, practice is done. Later, guys. So now the Looney Tunes realize they're in trouble, and so this sets up our big moment. They got to go get some help, and so Michael Jordan is playing golf with Larry Bird and Bill Murray. Which, like, as an adult, I'm like, really? Were they friends?
Look, I could see it. Like, Michael Jordan has played golf with
Everyone.
many celebrities that you might know. So.
Also, like, Ivan Reitman produced this, and he directed Ghostbusters.
Right.
So I'm sure Ivan Reitman and Bill Murray have a
In
relationship.
fact, they make reference to that in the movie.
Yeah, that's true. They do make reference to
The
that.
producer's a good friend of mine, and they sent a Teamster to pick me up.
Yeah.
I came to Ghostbusters pretty late, so like this movie was actually my introduction to Bill Murray, which makes it a very important movie in my life. Especially because as a kid, I don't really remember him being in the golf scene. I don't know why I forgot about that, but like I do remember him showing up in the third act. So like I remember as a kid being confused as like, who's this guy? Because it's like it's a big deal when he shows up, and it's like we're expected to know who he is, and like I kind of didn't.
Yeah,
because I didn't really know who Bill Murray was.
And you know what really didn't help is when Swackhammer says, "I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture." So then as a kid, I'm like, I guess that's Dan Aykroyd.
Which I don't remember that joke at all because it completely went over my head. But as an adult watching this week, I'm like, that's a good joke. I like that.
But yeah, so Michael's playing golf and he hits a shot, and then the Looney Tunes use a magnet to pull the ball around and into the hole, and boom, hole in one. Everyone's excited. Michael goes to pull the ball out, and he gets sucked down the hole by the Looney Tunes. What's up, Josh?
I love their reaction. Larry Bird, Bill Murray, and Wayne Knight's reaction to him getting sucked down. And Bill Murray's like, "Let me see that camera." To Wayne Knight.
That had to have been improv. That Bill Murray
really funny.
Is so good at that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Don't point that at me.
And I really underrated in this movie is Larry Bird is really funny. Like, he's playing a very straight character, but like his timing with Bill Murray is pretty fun. Like the scenes where they're talking about Bill Murray is kind of talking to Larry Bird and saying, the NBA needs new talent. Maybe I could make it in the, and he's like, stop it, Bill. It's not happening. It's not.
Let it go.
The timing of those scenes are just really funny. Like they use him in the movie really well.
I agree. Larry Bird was like, I didn't appreciate him enough as a kid. But like he's playing a great straight man in this to Bill Murray's, silly antics.
Funny.
I love that Michael Jordan gets sucked down a hole and they're just like, I guess we'll just go.
Just leave, what are you gonna do?
Should we?
Well, Wayne Knight doesn't leave.
Yeah, Wayne Knight stays
around,
and he's gonna do his best to find Mike. We're back in Looney Tunes land. I guess I don't really need to put up the spoilers warning for this. We're just gonna go through the whole movie here.
Whatever.
And I am gonna try to kind of burn through this stuff like I said.
Speed up.
So Mike is practicing and the monsters show up and they start bullying him, and this is one of my favorite moments in the movie because we get to they call him Chicken, and then Foghorn Leghorn says, "Now I'll say I resemble that remark." Which is another quote I continue to use to this day. But then we cut back to Charles Barkley. He's playing pickup basketball and with some girls, and gets absolutely schooled. And they start calling him a wannabe and a phony, and I just absolutely love it.
Be gone, wannabe. Be gone. You're Charles Barkley. Yeah, that's a great scene.
And then
that whole montage is good.
And then like I said, it goes into that montage we were talking about earlier. Stan, meanwhile, is digging his way to Looney Tune Land, and another golfer shows up to ask what he's doing. And he says,
he's waist deep in this hole. He's waist deep in the hole right now with a shovel in his hand, just digging the green up.
What are you doing? I'm fixing a divot. And the guy's like, oh. And he turns around and yells at his friend, he's fixing a divot. He's fixing a divot.
Yeah.
Amazing joke. Amazing. Great joke.
It was so worth it. Like, I can't imagine, like there was some production involved with that scene, and it was absolutely necessary because that joke is so good. Yes. But so then in Looney Tune Land, Bugs and Daffy are given the mission by Michael to go to his house to get his North Carolina basketball shorts, which he wears under his uniform in every game, and he also needs his shoes, and basically he needs his basketball stuff.
He's in golf attire right now.
He's wearing one golf shoe.
They pulled him down in golf shoes. Yeah.
So they go up there, and Daffy gets attacked by Jordan's dog Charles, who in the movie, I don't know if he actually had a dog named Charles, but the dog's full name in this movie is Charles Barkley.
Obviously, if you have a dog named Charles, he's going to be Charles Barkley. Obviously. Yeah.
But they get the stuff and follow, and then they're going back to the golf course to jump down a hole, go back to Looney Tune Land, and Stan witnesses this, so he's going to follow them back. Now that MJ finally has the stuff, he gets suited up, and we get what is, again, one of the best musical needle drops of the movie.
Woo!
With
Let's go.
Seal singing Steve Miller Band's Fly Like an Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
And so good. We get a great little montage of him dunking, and then it's finally time to go play the game. One thing I will say about this movie is it moves freaking quick at parts. Like, we just burned through some stuff here. But
I mean, some of the early stuff is like he doesn't get sucked down to Looney Tune Land until about half an hour in.
Yeah.
So like the first half hour is they got to set up the slavery aspect and stealing the NBA talents players and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you got to set up the slavery for later payoff, right? Yeah.
And this, go ahead, Hugo.
I think we skipped over the introduction of Lola Bunny.
Oh no, you're right. I absolutely did.
It's a moment in this movie where she just like shows up and the assumption is that, the girl bunny is probably not going to be that good at basketball, and don't call me doll, and then she just dunks all over Bugs.
Yeah,
I think
destroys him.
Yeah, it's Bugs.
And she's like,
Bugs calls her doll.
Apparently she's amazing at basketball, and I don't know. I just thought that was cool. I'm sure many furries were born with this movie, unfortunately.
I mean,
but
honestly, yeah,
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
She's not an original. I'm not as
no. This was her first appearance.
This is her first movie. She's the first time she
appeared, okay. And then they didn't really include her in much of anything else for even in
She's
the new
just
Looney
in
Tunes stuff. They did eventually like bring her into some of the newer Looney Tunes things, but not like not as much as you would have expected given how prominent her role was in this movie.
She's basically the second most prominent Looney Tunes next to Bugs Bunny. Kinda, especially in the basketball part.
Especially in the basketball game, which is where we're at. The announcer is asleep at the mic, so who should take over but two adorable little mice? And we've already said the quote a bunch of times, but they get started, and then the mouse clears his throat and then comes in with Bruce Buffer's announcer voice.
I love that bit. That bit so much.
And introduces the team, and they all get a bunch of cheers except for Daffy, which, again, as a longtime Looney Tunes fan, is perfect because, of course, everyone hates Daffy.
I love this whole sequence, though, when they're introduced. It just gets you so hyped up. And, like, honestly, when I go to basketball games and they do the player introductions, I usually think of this scene, to be perfectly honest.
As watching it today, yesterday, one thing that I did notice is that they don't do the traditional Michael Jordan introduction, which is so iconic, like from North Carolina, 23-6-6 at guard, Michael. That one. For some reason they choose not to go for that one.
I think they can't do that one because it's a different announcer.
I guess so, but in my head, I thought, they're definitely gonna. I hadn't seen this movie for a few years, and in my head, I was like, they definitely do the announcement for Michael. Like it's so iconic, and they choose not to do it. I thought that was a weird
missed opportunity.
Weird choice, yeah.
Okay, so game begins. The monsters absolutely dominate. It's a lot of fun visuals, but not a lot of fun to recap. So I'm just going to move on. And then we get to halftime. Stan goes to spy on the Monstars and discovers how they got their abilities, which, of course, has been the running question in reality is what happened to these players? Why are they all suddenly bad? And, the other teams refuse to play.
The whole NBA is kind of put on quarantine and they're not playing because they're afraid there's something infectious that might take their talent away.
One of the Lakers players says, bacteria like that can move faster than the speed of light. What?
weirdly prescient
Yeah.
for what the NBA season was last year.
That's
though.
what I thought too when I was watching. I was like, oh, that kind of nailed some of this. But Stan finds out, gets caught, and gets beat up a little bit, and he goes to tell the Looney Tunes squad about what he's learned. So MJ teaches all the kids a valuable lesson alongside Bugs Bunny, and that lesson is steroids are good. As they convince the rest of the Toon Squad that a bottle of water is actually Michael Jordan's secret stuff.
I love this scene so much, though. Like it's great, and it's honestly one of maybe like the main legacies of this movie is like anytime you make reference to Michael's secret stuff, like for the next 10 years after this movie came out, like everyone knew what you were talking about, and it's a great reference.
But yeah, so
it's really funny as well because Michael is at the beginning giving him the pep talk, like, you guys know it's just halftime, we still got this. You
believe
guys,
in yourselves.
I believe in yourself. And there's Bugs
come together as a team.
And there's Bugs just walking around, and you see Bugs very clearly being sarcastic towards what Michael is saying, because he's like, yeah, you don't understand. These guys, they don't really believe in themselves at all.
And Daffy keeps saying, oh, brother. Like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Being his Daffy self. But so they drink the secret stuff, and they think they've got it now. So then they go back out after halftime, and they, of course, turn around. They're going to dominate, and they start pulling all sorts of Looney Tunes antics, including a great Pulp Fiction reference with Miserlou playing, which Josh alluded to earlier.
They shoot out his teeth.
And
did not catch that reference as a kid.
I certainly didn't. Hugo might have.
Possibly. I can't remember.
Hugo famously watching Quentin Tarantino movies at age 9 or whatever.
Yeah, it's true. It's all true.
But so they're doing so great that Swackhammer has now decided that forget the Looney Tunes. I want Michael Jordan as my next attraction at Moron Mountain. And Jordan says, okay, deal. If I win, you give the NBA players their talent back. If you win, you get me. And then Swackhammer, again, really into slavery, starts listing off all the things he's going to force Michael Jordan to do, including playing one-on-one games against all the people coming to the park.
Paying customers,
and and he has to lose every time, which to me would lead to this being a very poor attraction.
Also, like, the imagery of Michael Jordan, even as a cartoon in this, montage, him, chained to a, to a thing.
Yeah.
That's some
pretty weird.
Especially, evoking slavery so much, then having that imagery. It's a lot. That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, a little dark. Again,
I don't even call it humor. It's not dark humor. It's just dark.
Just dark, not dark humor.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
Yeah,
it's again, sort of prescient to the way this movie is using basketball as a means to make money is the same sort of thing. I mean, you were talking about this a little bit off camera, Josh. You want to elaborate a little for me?
Yeah, I can get into this. Again, to reference past guest and future guest in front of the show, TJ, he sent me that stream of consciousness email, and I hope he's okay with me sharing this on mic. But so when Bugs Bunny is telling Michael that there are these aliens that want to make us slaves on their planet. The image we see is Bugs Bunny in this oversized suit, kind of dancing in front of a piano, doing this terrible comedy routine. And TJ thought that was evoking a minstrel show. And then, a scene or two later, we see, the scene where the aliens steal the NBA player's talent. And, the audience, at least the audience members we see, are, mostly white people. So he thought that was kind of equating that minstrel show of Looney Tunes performing for these brain-dead audiences to the NBA players performing for these, performing quote unquote for these white audience members. And then you also evoke slavery with Michael Jordan being chained to a bolt or whatever in this second fantasy sequence. There's possibly some stuff to unpack here. And I'm not sure how much of that was intended or how much of that was, I don't really have a conclusion to this, but that's just interesting to look at,
Well, and that's why I thought it was so worth mentioning, because it's whether they did that on purpose, you can see that you can see it. So it's it's not whether they meant to put it there or not. It's there, and it's meaningful in even
right.
So I'm really glad that TJ mentioned that.
Well, the other thing that I said to you guys off mic, and this is more for me than from TJ, but like the racial coding of the Monstars, because like every time they come on screen, they have like aggressive rap music as their soundtrack, and like that's not anywhere else in the movie, which I thought was kind of weird, kind of interesting. And like as TJ and I were talking about this before we recorded, but like the Monstars characterization is like kind of like a gangsta kind of aesthetic, but like that aesthetic isn't really there in the players that they took the talent from,
Right.
and it's not really there before they transform. So it's like an entirely new creation, and like I kind of see that as like making the villains of your movie like coded black, and like I don't really know why they did that besides it just being the 90s and people were less sensitive, I guess. But taken in totality, I don't know what to make of it, but like it's weird. It's a weird.
It is kind of weird. It is kind of weird, especially seen like a few decades later.
Yes.
It's noticeable. I don't know, maybe it wasn't as noticeable at the time. Maybe it's like, oh, they're basketball players, so they coded black. But it's like it's
there's a lot of weird coding with villains in Disney movies throughout your childhood. There's a lot of queer coding with Disney villains, but like the coding of villains in particularly 80s and 90s movies it's interesting to unpack in 2021.
Well established stuff there.
Yes. Yes.
And that's something that I think is going to be interesting to watch in the new Space Jam. Is do we see that same sort of thing when they have the new basketball villains? You know, how do they approach them this time? I'm actually going to be looking for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like honestly, like I actually, having watched the movie this week and like kind of picking up on how coded the villains appear to be, I like actually searched, like I did a Google search, see if anybody else was like kind of picking up on that, see if that was like in the discourse at all, and it's not. No one's really talking about that. I don't mean to like bring this up, and like I'm not trying to cancel Space Jam by any means, but it's just like interesting to think about. And like the only reference I saw was that like someone wrote an article about how like the Goon Squad, which is the bad guys in the new one, they would probably be able to beat the Monstars, and that's like the only discussion of the Monstars happening in 2021. So again, I'm not trying to cancel the movie or anything. It's just something I noticed and something that's kind of weird. Yeah, kind of weird in 2021. Yeah, it's weird.
Definitely something to put a lens on for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, so the Toon Squad is dominating now, and they're making their way back, and so.
Once Michael agrees with Swackhammer to like put his own freedom on the line for this game, suddenly Swackhammer turns to his players and says, "Crush them!"
Yeah,
and then the Monstars start dominating.
They start fouling like crazy, and apparently, even though Marvin the Martian is playing the referee, he is not doing a good job.
Halftime.
Though to be fair, like the Looney Tunes used guns. At one point, Bugs Bunny kind of rode around on a scooter while having the basketball, with I'm pretty sure it's a travel.
Which would be travel.
Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a travel.
And
they don't call them a lot in the NBA, but still.
And in the final moments of the game, Daffy Duck clearly charges.
Yeah.
So the Monsters are fouling more. They crush the entire team. They're about to crush Lola. Bugs dives in to save Lola, pushes her out of the way, and so she, rewards him with a big kiss to thank him.
Because we all know kisses from women are a reward for good behavior for men.
Yes, another valuable
there you go,
lesson
kids.
To teach children. Stan finally gets a chance to play because everyone else was squished, and then he also gets squished. So then who should show up to take the 5th spot on the team but Bill Murray?
Da 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 da. Or whatever.
And
how he does it.
When he shows up, my first thought was, wait, how did he get here? And then, of course, they immediately answer it in the best possible way. We talked about it earlier. Daffy says, hey, how did you get here? And Bill Murray says, oh, the producer's a friend of mine. And, he sent the Teamster to pick me up and bring me down here.
Excellent.
Which is how he got there in real life. Because he wasn't supposed to be in the final climactic basketball scene, but after like filming with Michael, like seeing Michael film some of these scenes with this new technology, he was like, this seems fun. I would like to be in it.
Yeah.
But Bill Murray comes out.
Just spoke to Ivan Reitman and showed up.
Bill Murray comes out, and this is his big moment to shine. And so they come up with a great game plan for how they're going to get the ball back and score. And of course, in the final moment, Michael Jordan stretches his arm as he's being tackled to the ground.
Before that, when Wayne Knight gets like squished, right. Bugs and Daffy explain to Michael that this is Looney Tune Land, therefore like impossible physics things can happen here, and you can do weird things with your body that you can't do in real life, and this is the payoff to that setup that happened like 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah. So then he's being clung to by several of the Monstars, and so he stretches his arm, literally stretching it like Stretch Armstrong, out, and then slams the ball down at the last second, and the Toons win. So great, big moment. Michael Jordan tells Bill Murray, "Man, you really do have some skills," which I also just absolutely love.
No, the fact that he tells him you could possibly play in the NBA, I'm like, come on, man. Like, I just watched you extend your arm 50 yards, and this is the most ridiculous thing that's happened in this movie. Is you telling Bill Murray he can play in the NBA?
Yes, 100%. But so then,
and Bill Murray is like, no, I don't think I'm gonna play. I'm gonna go
wash
on
my
top.
knees.
He's gonna retire on top. But so
very funny.
The Nerdlucks decide they would like to stay with the Looney Tunes, and so then Michael Jordan gets to take.
Well,
go ahead.
Before that, Michael sees Swackhammer bossing around his team.
Yes,
and Michael famously says, "Hey, why you take it from this guy?" And they say, "Because he's bigger than we used to be." Great moment. And then they beat the crap out of their boss. Seize the means of production, Monstars.
Yeah, that's what happens, pretty much.
And then they give the talent back, and they're small again, and then they say, "Let's stay here with you and the Looney Tunes." And I love the scene where Bugs is like, "I don't know if you're loony enough to stay with us," and they do like a little routine. That's good stuff.
It was really good. And so then Michael takes the spaceship back to reality and lands just in time for the baseball game. He lands on the pitcher's mound, walks out, and everyone's like, "Okay, let's play baseball."
I love that scene. I mean, there's a moment where we didn't really talk about this, but when Daffy and Bugs get the shoes and the shorts, like the kids come in and rescue them from the dog, and like the kids get a nice moment. This is a kids movie, so it's nice to center the kids a little bit into the movie, and it's like a secret that they're keeping that like that's where Dad is playing off the Looney Tunes. So then in this scene, they're sitting with their mom. Mom's like, "Where is Michael?" And they're like, "Oh, he's not back from another game."
At this point, Mom should have been like, "Where has your dad been for the last 2 days?"
Yeah. But there's a single shot that like I was watching with my wife. She like rolled her eyes and groaned really loud, and it's like when Michael lands, it's a shot of his son, and he just goes, just does a thumbs up, and I'm like, oh, this is such a 1996 moment. Just a single reaction shot of a kid doing a thumbs up. I hate it.
But then MJ goes and meets up with all the other basketball players who have lost their talent. They're all still hanging out together in a gym, conveniently. And MJ's like, "Here, touch this ball, and it'll give you your talent back." And, of course, it does. And they don't immediately go, "Michael, did you steal our talent?"
What witchcraft is
Where
this,
did
Michael?
you get this? But they got their talent back, and they ask him to play some 3-on-3 with them. And he says no. And then they say, "Well, he probably doesn't have it anymore." And so then Jordan's like, And then, of course, he rejoins the NBA.
Don't I? Yes.
And they play highlights of him in 45, because the year that he came out, he was wearing 45.
Wearing a different jersey, yes.
Yes.
And he rejoins the Bulls, and that's the end of Space Jam. Fantastic.
And I love how this was filmed right after his comeback, and like it released after the Bulls had already re-won another title in 1996. So it's kind of inserting itself in the canon life of Michael Jordan, and it's like explaining why he decided to come back to basketball, because he had this one game with the Looney Tunes. And I think it's really clever in that sense.
And that's why I think like I'm not sure the sequel will be able to replicate this, because there's the special circumstances of like Michael quitting and coming back, like they really utilize that to their advantage. And like I already mentioned the catharsis that's involved with like seeing him play basketball, taking that away, and then seeing him play basketball again. I think that's like a big part of why the movie works for me, at least that first half. But then like you just said, Hugo, the fact that they'd already won a championship and they're about to win 2 more, as we in the future know. But like, and to credit a game with the Monstars as like part of his second three-peat is really clever. And I don't know if they're gonna be able to do that again. I don't know I don't know how they're gonna tie in real life the way that this movie was able to.
If they if they don't find a way to work in LeBron James saying he's taking his talents to Looney Tune land, this movie's a waste.
And I'm going to storm out of the theater and demand my money back if that happens. If that doesn't happen.
They will not do that.
Man, it would be so good, though.
I agree. Like, I am wondering how they'll use real-life circumstances in LeBron's life into the movie, or if they will at all. I don't know. It is true that the kind of the legend of Michael leaving basketball for 2 years and then coming back is such an iconic thing for him, and the way that they use in the movie is so smart that I don't know how they will, be able to do something similar. But we'll see.
Okay, so now it's time to wrap it up. We're going to do our film to remember ranking. The current top 10. At number 10, after our re-ranking, it's a Wonderful Life. Number 9, Citizen Kane. 8, The Thing. 7, Lawrence of Arabia. 6, The Departed. 5, Boogie Nights. 4, Shaun of the Dead. 3, Paddington 2. 2, Silence of the Lambs. And 1, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Thank you for recapping the top 10, but I don't think this is going to make it into the top 10.
No, definitely not.
All respect to Space Jam.
I do love the movie, and obviously I will go back and watch this many, many more times throughout the rest of my life. But for me, I would say I would put it above the Matrix Reloaded on our list, so it would be at the 24 spot. What about you guys? Hugo?
I'm in pain at this Matrix Reloaded slander.
Get used to it.
Yeah, I am, so it's fine. As I said at the beginning, I think the movie is really fun, and I think I kind of have an emotional attachment to it, and I'm sure you guys do as well. But it's like, I don't think it's a great movie. It's kind of a little fun idea. So
3 out of 5. On
our list, I'll rank it lower, but it's a fun, enjoyable movie. So I would personally put it at number 20. It would be 27. So below Iron Man 3.
I agree with Hugo, and I want to put it below Iron Man 3, above Sugarland Express, with all respect to our guy Stevie Spielberg.
So since we're actually trying to take into account all of our rankings a little more, that's going to put it at just above Iron Man 3, so it would be in the 26th spot, right?
With apologies to Shane Black. Yes, that sounds good.
With apologies to Shane Black. So that's going to do it for this week. What are we watching next week, guys?
So next week, I thought, just because our list is lacking in some more action movies, so I wanted to talk about a recent action movie that is one of my favorites. Really, really good movie, John Wick. The first one. The fourth one is, I think, news came out that they started filming this week. This wasn't planned, but it just so happens that the news came out this week. And yeah, great movie. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
I love that movie.
I've not seen it. Yeah, I've not seen it, so I've been needing a reason to watch. So yeah.
All right, so that's going to do it.
Crazy.
That's going to do it for this week on Remember the Film. If you would please follow us on Twitter at RTF_pod. You can follow me at Good Game Grizz, Hugo's at Hugo Panay, and Josh at Brosh Jadley. Please follow us on there so you can find out all the things that we have going on in the rest of our lives. And then join us next week for the next film to remember on Remember the Film. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.